knocking your back door down. I'll be coming around, knocking your back door down. So today I'm going to install Baker Air Wings on my 2015 1800. I've already installed the left air wing, and these are Baker built air wings. As according to my research and talking to people, these are about the best ones you can find, which I highly recommend since you're drilling holes in your bike and it's going to be something that's permanently affixed. And these mount real easy. There's already two 5mm screws under this trim piece. They've made it so you don't have to remove the trim piece to install these, but you do have to be very careful and use the template how they say to use it, because there's not a lot of room for error when you drill these holes. Plus the hole you're drilling is just about as wide as where these two radiuses come to. So if you're off to one side a little bit, you'll cut into that radius, and you know, that's not good. But these are a nice set of air wings. You can pick them up from 160 to 180, 200 if you can't find a deal, which isn't too bad. I think I found them for 185. So to get started here, I always like to protect my paint on Precious here, and yeah, I just said that. Because if something slips, it's kind of nice to at least have a little bit of protection there to protect your bike, especially when you're doing something like this, drilling holes in something that's kind of pricey. It's expensive. There we go. And if you're putting these on a Harley Davidson, you have to be careful when you drill your holes. You have to put a little bit of silicone in the holes, or oil will leak out of the holes. As you see how I was joking around there, you get that. Alright, I protected my paint. The holes are going to go here and here. If you've ever had this trim piece off, you'll notice there's two 5mm. On the left side they hold your audio and your CB in. On the right side here, they hold underneath this panel. There's a couple of more. And if you take them out, this panel comes off. On the left side, your panel is up a little bit more, sticks out a little bit more. It's a thicker panel than on the right side. So left side, right side are different, because the right side, the two bumpers that stabilize the piece, both have 1/4 inch bumpers. On the left, your outside bumper is 1/4 inch and your inside bumper is 1/8 inch. They tell you that in the directions, and Baker's even nice enough to mark on them right and left. On the right one, they go ahead and install your bumpers so you can't confuse the two, which is kind of nice. And by the way, Baker is a Christian company. If that makes a difference to you, I've found through the years that I get a little bit better service from companies that are Christian companies. What they ask you to do, the template is symmetrical top to bottom and left to right. You know, thus the word symmetrical. What they want you to do is line it up with this crack here. There's a seam right there. And then they want you to line up the inside with the inside seam right there. And so what I do is, if you line it up with this seam here, it seems to offset this hole a little too far to the left, where I felt like the paddle bit was going to be off to the outside and cut into that radius. So what I did is I just kind of split the difference on them, and I found on the left side that worked pretty well. So what I did is I line it up with the top on that crack right there, and then, like they say, I line up the top part of the template in the middle of that crack. I moved it over just a fraction of a millimeter to the left, so that this hole is in between the two radiuses, because I don't want it to cut into that radius there. So I split the difference of where I think it should be and where they tell me it should be. It worked on the left side, and what I did before I drilled my hole on the left side is I popped this piece off and looked at it just to kind of see where it fell in between these two radiuses. And it does fall a little to one side, but you know, I'm me. I'm a little anal retentive. So when you have it to where you want it, and the directions are some of the better directions I've seen on some of the products you can put on your bike, like a trailer hitch or foot pegs. And then I did the same down here. You've got your seam right there. And so I just put this, I moved it a little bit and put the circle about in the middle in between the two radiuses. And I found that worked on the other side. It's pretty close, no matter where you put the template. No matter if you follow their directions and put it along that seam, or whether you center it in between the two radiuses, regardless if you get it at the top of this seam or at the bottom of this seam, you're a little off when you get inside of there. So just plan on that you're going to have to do a little bit of trimming. But the piece that does go on there, the bracket that does go on here, more than covers up to a millimeter. You can be off up to a millimeter, maybe a little bit more, and this bracket's still going to cover it up. By the way, all this stuff is great chrome plating. There's no wrinkles in it. You can tell when you look on the inside of the plating, or maybe where there was a rough edge, that the plating really adhered to it, and they did a really nice job on the chrome plating, unlike some of the other ones I've seen. What I've done, once I think I've got it where I want it, they say use a center punch and a hammer. That really didn't make any sense to me, to put a center punch on here and hit it with a hammer, being that it's all ABS. And so I just took a little jeweler's screwdriver and put it in the middle of the hole and just turned it a few times, and that seemed to make a pretty good starting point. Plus you're using a paddle bit, so it's got such a nice point on it. And they do include your 5/8 paddle bit in the kit for you, which you also don't see a lot of that. People including the tools for you to use. I double check my holes. I notice I've had that one a little to the right. I'll start a little to the left. That one looks pretty centered. When you are drilling holes in ABS, you're better to go a little slow, because when you're drilling into plastic, you'd rather drill it than melt it. So I'm going to drill my first hole here, which looks like it's in a pretty good spot. That one ended up pretty good. That one was a little low, but like I said, I haven't seen where you can get these right on. And just because I'm paranoid, I'm gonna double check mine. And it looks fairly decent. So and that's not too bad. So I'm just going to trim those out just a little bit with my knife. And I don't know what would work better for plastic. The paddle bit always seems like a pretty archaic way of drilling holes in ABS, but like I said, the kit they give you does have room for error. So the next step is we use our 5mm and we take these bolts out. One of the things I kind of thought about was just using a regular drill bit to drill these holes, because they are such a pain in the butt to drill. And I loosened both these bolts, and then I used a little magnet to pull these out with. I don't know if you could lose them down in there or not. And like installing any accessory, they always say it goes pretty good, but nah, there's a bunch of different things you have to do, just like pulling these out are difficult. Like I said, be prepared. Your holes are both going to be a little bit off, but on your spacers and on your screws, each gives you a little bit of leeway to get them in there. On this top hole I didn't do very good. The bottom hole I did a lot better. That's probably the worst one I've drilled. And then what they do is they give you 2 nylon spacers, so this is tightened against the frame in here, your fairing frame, and it doesn't push against these. And water can get down in there. That just drains down into the radiator, so it doesn't matter. One thing I did is I took the nylon spacers that go in there are white, and what I did is I took a Sharpie and went around them and made them black, even though they're barely visible. And then these fit in here pretty well on both sides of the bike. On the top here, I had to do a little bit of modification to the hole, and like I said, the template's off. It says to line it up with that inside seam, and what I found on the other side, and what I've noticed on this side too, is move it, I'm gonna say almost a millimeter. I'm gonna say move your template out I'm gonna say 2 millimeters on both of these. 2 millimeters would have ended up having these perfectly centered in here. The other side was exactly the same on the template. If you move your template out 2 millimeters, then these will be perfectly lined up, because on the other side too, when I lined up the template how they said to do it, there's a little plastic piece, a little piece here that is the lip of this piece that hangs through, but when the drill bit hits it, it skips one way or the other when it hits that, and you can see as I move this, that piece is there. So to get this to fit in there, and on the other side, if you follow the template, you're going to end up with your hole toward the inside and on this. And I wasn't sure, but this confirms it, that both these holes could be drilled toward the outside of the motorcycle, 1 to 2 millimeters. So just like on the other side, following their template ended up being a little to the inside, so I ended up carving this little piece out just a little bit. And as any of you guys know that install accessories on motorcycles, there is no easy installation, which I've learned when I see somebody say there's an easy installation. It's almost like saying historic downtown. And just like on the other side, I had to work with this a little bit to get it to go in there. And so that's exactly what I am gonna do. And I don't know if I've ever installed an accessory that didn't require some modification. Once again, this is exactly what I did on the other side. I shaved this down a little bit so it was able to kind of be angled and get a start inside of there. And remember, when you're using an X-Acto knife or a utility knife like this, always cut towards your thumb And that way you're guaranteed when this slides off here, you'll cut your thumb. And so just for those of you that aren't experienced with utility knives or X-Acto knives, and this is identical to the other side following their template. It took me a second to get that trimmed up to fit in there. Once it does fit in there, you can see, even if you get outside your hole a little bit, they still fit in there really well. And like I said, I put a little bit of Sharpie on there, and then you are ready for your top only. And it is more than obvious how these go in there. Remember, when you're putting screws in something like this, if they don't go in relatively easy the first time, stop. It's easier to stop, look at it, see if there's anything in there, than it is to cross thread it. The bottom one actually has your little brace piece on it that keeps your air wing stable and from wiggling back and forth and ending up cracking all that ABS. And so that is this piece here. And if you notice, it can only go on one way. And also, if you notice, it goes on top, because if it goes on the bottom, there's a huge gap here, and thus, you know, it doesn't work. And so that's how it goes on there. On the other side, you have a button that's right here that's kind of in the way. You can put it level like that and it looks pretty good, but it's so close to that button, and it didn't hurt it at all for me to angle these a little bit, and I followed the angle here and here somewhat. And so if depending on how picky you are, you can do that. I tend to be quite a bit too picky, and I normally don't make videos on how things get installed, but I couldn't find a good one online. They had the 2012, and it was a pretty good video, and but I just thought, well, I'll go ahead and make one. And once again, and they talk about it too, anytime you are putting things on like this, do not over tighten them. It's not a transmission or something that has torque specifications, so snug is good on these. And like I said, this is a nice kit, better than some of the other ones I've seen on other people's bikes. So what I do is I snug them up, and like a lot of things, give them about another quarter turn. If you snug these up, that one's a little loose, and that's, if you can't unscrew them easily, they're okay. Plus, you're gonna, like anything on a motorcycle, you're gonna frequently check these. If you tighten these up too much, there's a little plastic, a little nylon collar here that the chrome caps pop on. One thing, if you over tighten these, it'll distort this cap and it'll ruin it, and then your little pretty chrome pieces won't snap on there. Alright, let's see here, and we are ready to put the wing on. Don't let these things fool you. They can be a little funny to put on, just like I did there. And this will always go down, this piece here that comes out, that has a little bit cut out of it, because that can go in the top part of your radiator. In the summertime, it deflects that heat, and you guys with 1800s and 1500s know how much heat comes out of that radiator right on the front of your leg. But in the winter, warm, good. So now that we have all that installed, going to install these. And if you notice, they put a little bit, I'm not sure if it's a Loctite or not. I guess so. Maybe I've been out of it mechanics for a while, but I don't know that I've ever seen yellow Loctite. But once again, these have nylon caps, cap keepers, or whatever you want to call them too. So tightening these up, the same rules apply. And they do have pretty good instructions, like I said, better than some of the products I put on, where basically you just throw the instructions in the trash. And on some of these, I'm not sure who writes the instructions, but I don't know if I could do any better of a job. And I tighten these up the exact same way I did the others. Get them snug, give them about a quarter turn. Oh, what I was getting at is they do say in the instructions, check all this frequently, because any of you guys that have had air wings on other motorcycles, you know they can come loose. You want these tied enough in here to where you can move them with one hand, but the wind won't move them. If you have any questions, leave them kind of loose, let the wind move them, gradually tighten them up till the wind doesn't move them anymore. Because if these are hard to move, this is all attached only with 2 screws going through these plastic pieces to the frame of the fairing. And as you know, on anything with a whole bunch of ABS, like a lot of the newer motorcycles are, you can tear it up. One thing I kind of like to do is I put a little light bulb. I put a little light bulb on these chrome caps to kind of help them a little bit, because they are a super tight fit, and they are a little hard to get on. And you want to make sure you hear them pop when you're putting them on. And they cooled off a little bit, but that does seem to help if you warm them up a little bit. But they are a tight fit. And 2 more to go. I was a little concerned about these 2 when I put them on, because they're so close together. That one popped on, and that one has not. So, and boy, I don't like hitting stuff. There we go. And those all popped on. And like I said, these are nice air wings, and they go on pretty easily. The only thing I would change is when I drill my 2 main holes, the span is good, and how far the template is from this crack is good. I'd move it out 1 to 2 millimeters. 2 millimeters would be right on. 1 millimeter would get it closer than it is now. Good air wings. Good price, $180, $185. Good instructions. On the instructions, every single part is available to them. They also include 2 nylon nuts that go through to an acorn, just in case, I don't know why, a bird strike or something tears them up. And that's pretty much it. Another thing I like is they put a little tab in here, so if these when you're running them all the way to the out position, they hit that rubber tab in there, and they can't fly all the way around. That's nice. It would be neat if they did put some kind of a little tab to do it the other way, because they would hit in here. But that's it. Please leave comments. Sure would be nice if you guys got any ideas, better ways to do anything. That way people that watch the video have a better idea, because there's always a better idea and other tips and tricks that we don't know that other people know. Alright, enjoy your Goldwing, guys, and be safe. Watch out for cars. Nobody sees you, everybody's out to hit you.